There was a lot of excitement going into episode 18 of BLEACH'S 1000-Year Blood War arc anime, and after having seen the episode, I can safely say that it did not disappoint. This episode continues with a second invasion as we turn our attention towards Mask Demasculine. So far, we have seen the defeats of BG9, Kangdu, and Bambietta. However, each of these victories came with significant casualties for the Shinigami. It seems as though the situation with Mask is going to be no different. Episode 18, titled RENJI'S at Ringside, is super action-packed. We have a really intense battle against Mask with the return of Rukia and Renji onto the battlefield, as well as episode 18 featuring 3 all-new Bankai reveals, with the Bankai of Kensei and Rose being showcased for the very first time in anime form, as well as the new and improved version of Renji's Bankai being revealed. This week's episode adapts material from chapter 560 all the way to 565, adapting just under 5 chapters worth of manga material. In addition to all of this madness, we have 3 prominent anime exclusive scenes to discuss, which includes a post-credit scene that has reworked a lot of dialogue from chapter 565 in order to craft a new interaction between Uryu and Hashward with a totally different tone to what was established within the manga. So definitely be sure to stick around until the end of the video where I share my thoughts on this week's post-credit scene, as well as some surprising information about the fate of BG9 and Kangdu at the end of the video. So without further delay, here is my breakdown of episode 18 of BLEACH'S 1000-Year Blood War arc anime. Episode 18 of the 1000-Year Blood War arc anime is very fascinating. It covers a lot of battle-heavy manga material while also finding time to include a few anime-only scenes to flesh out the story. This week's episode has Atsushi Wakabayashi as the action animation director. He's a veteran in the industry, and his addition to this episode in particular is evident because there are some amazing cuts of animation during some of the fight scenes here. This week's episode begins with a scene before the intro song where we see the Research and Development Institute speaking about the success rate of the Shinigami and how things are looking bleak, with the Quincy taking advantage of the confusion that has disrupted the chain of command of the Shinigami after having replaced the Serite with their own city. This has made it difficult to navigate the new terrain for the Shinigami, as well as making communication impossible after their means of communication was removed following the infiltration of the Quincy. This new anime-only scene at the beginning of the episode is dedicated to establishing Shunsui as the new head captain. It allows him to rein in the doubts of his underlings as he reassures them and guides them with a plan to help them get back onto their feet and to begin fighting back against the enemy. This was excellently executed as Shunsui comes across as calm and authoritative, while all at the same time retaining his playful charm as he jokes off Mayuri's taunts and his lack of faith in him as a leader. I really love this scene because Shunsui isn't really seen much during this portion of the story in the manga, so I love that core 2 of the anime is including new scenes like this before the opening song or during the post-credit scene, so as to not disrupt the flow of some of the fights which are pretty much very faithful to the manga. In certain areas, the fights are streamlined somewhat in order to make some time for these new scenes, but I don't think that it overall affects the pacing of the episode. If anything, the story seems to progress at a fantastic rate with these episodes, often making them feel like they are flown by because of how much has just happened. Following the intro song, we begin with material adapted from the manga as we pick up from where we had left off at the end of episode 17, with Kensei and Rose appearing to protect Hisagi from the stern-written Mask. The early portions of the episode do a fantastic job of showcasing Kensei's Bankai. I loved how Tekken Tachikaze was adapted into anime form. Kensei's explosive punches, which pound away infinitely at whatever his fist makes contact with, was adapted into anime form with a lot of justice, especially the scene where the sound effects are perfectly matched up to Kensei thrusting his fist into the stern-writter's stomach. I also have to praise how James's character is portrayed within the anime. His emotional voice acting adds a nice comedic charm to the scenes where we see Mask recovering. Now, speaking of recovering, the incredible visual effects here are astounding. As the star on the stern-writter's forehead glows brightly, the animation becomes so fluid and dynamic as he begins his counterattack against Kensei and Rose. Now, before we cut to the mid-card of the episode, the remainder of the first half adapts material from chapter 561 where Kensei is defeated by Mask following a series of devastating attacks which end up overpowering the captain, and it's all thanks to to the cheering of James, which really strengthens Mask. I loved how Kensei tries to retaliate, but Mask withstands his infinite barrage of attacks because James in the distance is cheering him on, yelling that he can do it. I really think that the duo of Mask and James are severely underrated, and as a fan of professional wrestling, I really appreciated how Kubo worked this dynamic into the story via this strange but unique shrift ability. After Kensei's Bankai embarrassingly has no effect on the Sternritter, he is swatted away like a fly before he is crushed by the Sternritter. Rose then ends up getting his 5 seconds of fame here as he too activates his Bankai called Kinshara Butodan. It is a Bankai that allows Rose to manipulate music in order to manifest physical illusions, like a whirlpool of water or intense flames that end up surrounding the enemy. Rose explains that his music grants him power over the heart of his opponents, and he has total control over whatever he manifests as long as his target is captivated by the music that he is playing. He controls his power like a musical conductor, but Mask, in order to counter his Bankai, hilariously ruptures his eardrums in order to no longer be affected by his powers. Unfortunately, Rose and Kensei were really done dirty in the manga, and it appears as though nothing has changed in the anime. Both of them were wiped out during the first half of the episode, and this is before Renji turns up to take over the fight. Thankfully, Rose getting impaled by Mask is still included within the anime, and it is superbly animated. I really loved how the star on Mask's forehead glows before it abruptly fires through Rose's body. It totally takes you by surprise, and it's just a jaw-dropping moment to behold. 3 seated officers and 2 captains were taken out by a single Sternritter. So now I think it's time for Mask to meet his maker. Unlike the manga, which had hinted at Renji and Rukia arriving within the Serite, showing them falling and landing in earlier chapters, the anime instead had kept the identity a secret of the 2 mysterious latecomers to the battle. Renji's new tiger print clothing looks awesome in the anime, and I cannot believe that I'm seeing this material adapted into anime form, as Rukia appears behind him too. When Rukia leaves to help Kensei and Rose, Renji confidently confronts Mask. This is unprecedented. Renji here establishes that he is stronger than captain level as he effortlessly defeats Mask during the second half of the episode. Now I need to go over some notable points about this fight and the way that it is adapted into the anime. Some of the moments from chapter 562 are streamlined in the anime after Mask has his eardrums healed by James. The anime has Renji cut up James, and this skips about 7 pages from the manga where the 2 of them clash before Renji cuts up James into pieces. Now I'm going to talk more about the streamlining of this fight in tomorrow's manga vs anime video, so definitely stay tuned for that. On the other hand, the anime does have a nice exclusive scene here of Rukia finding Isane, who has set up a temporary medical shelter within the ruins of a building, where she hands over Kensei and Rose to her, who are currently in critical condition. This is so that Isane can promptly begin to heal them, and hopefully they can return to the battlefield as soon as possible with some of their own anime exclusive fight scenes. Seeing Isane's small medical station really was a nice addition, and it serves to show us aspects of the war against the Quincy which we didn't have time to see within the manga, so you're always going to find me praising additions like this into the anime episodes. After we cut back to Mask vs Renji, more material from chapter 563 is streamlined, as some lines of dialogue are not included within the anime, like Mask recalling having dropkicked Renji during the first invasion. I suppose these are minor inconsequential lines of dialogue, and by removing them it serves to speed up the pacing because Mask activates his holy form very quickly here, and to be honest I guess we had to sacrifice some of Renji vs Mask in order to get those extended fight sequences during Mask's battle against Hisagi, Ikaku and Yumichika. The visual highlight for this week's episode has to be the animation cut of Mask's ability Star Flash Supernova. I was thoroughly impressed by how it was executed within the anime. From the flawless art to the stunning animation and visual effects, it all comes together to give us yet again another impressive cut of animation from the second core of Bleach's 1000 Year Blood War arc anime. The way that CG elements were combined with the 2D animation, it really helps to put into perspective the scale of the attack that Mask unleashes, and it does a fantastic job of doing justice to one of the most unique and creative shrift abilities and holy forms out of all of the battles that we have seen thus far. Mask really was a formidable opponent, but he was no match for the new and improved Renji, who after having trained with Ichibei learns the true name of his Bankai, which grants him full access to his Zanbakudo's power. Now as we have seen, this ended up unlocking a new Bankai for Renji called So'o Zabimaru, which replaces his previous Bankai Hihio Zabimaru. We get another awesome new soundtrack here which accompanies Renji's Bankai release, as the episode concludes with Renji unleashing his attack called Zaga Teppo, which once again is incredibly animated. The visual effects as his Reiatsu manifests into a snake's head as it bites down on unmask, literally electrifying his body from inside out as he slowly begins to disintegrate. This brings an end to the episode as we cut to the credits, with the episode having adapted manga material all the way up to the end of chapter 564. Now definitely be sure to stick around until the end of the credits, because we have a post-credit scene which adapts material from chapter 565, but it changes around some important details. The scene begins with Yhwach reacting to James being defeated, which is followed by a conversation between Hashward and Uryu, which is changed around within the anime. The anime adapts pages 5 to 10 of chapter 565, as the first 4 pages of the chapter were adapted earlier on into the intro sequence of episode 14, which explains the birth of Yhwach. Now, the 5 pages used to adapt this week's post-credit scene ended up having some additions made to Yhwach receiving James's power, as it shows him dissolving into a dark shadow and then transforming into Hashward. This leads to a conversation between Hashward and Uryu, which occurs in a totally different setting, with the context of the conversation being different in the anime too, which results in it being an overall calm discussion in comparison to the manga, where it was underpinned by this tone of hostility. Because in the manga, Uryu was walking to Yhwach's chambers before he ends up being stopped by Hashward, who abruptly asks what he wants. In my opinion, the manga definitely needed work during moments like this, and I'm glad that Kubo and the anime staff have picked up on this and are making some changes. Because in the manga, Hashward's character is overly hostile and suspicious of Uryu from the very beginning, as opposed to the anime, which has decided to play the long game and reveal Hashward's true feelings about Uryu down the line. Now, I love that Hashward had name dropped Soken Ishida here in the anime, and it's continuing on with all of the additional material involving Uryu's character, where he learns about Yhwach and this other side to the Quincy from Soken Ishida's diary. As you piece things together, you can see everything is being meticulously built upon via all of the anime exclusive scenes involving Uryu questioning his father, reading his grandfather's book, having Hashward collect him, and then having him stay beside Yhwach as his successor, and then carrying out orders like bringing Kangdu and BG9 to Yhwach. Now, speaking of Kangdu and BG9, remember last week's episode, we had seen Hashward get called back to Yhwach, but we didn't see him pass judgment on Kangdu and BG9. This is material from chapter 559, which the anime had skipped over in episode 17. Instead, it had decided to show us Mask pummeling Hisagi. Now, I may be getting really hopeful here, but what if Uryu picking up BG9 and Kangdu was set up for them to play more of a role within the story later on? Because what if this isn't the last time that we see them? This is really interesting because we don't know BG9's Shrift ability, and we haven't seen Kangdu's holy form. So there is every possibility that these two Sternritters may get a second chance in the anime in order to have additional details about them revealed to us. To be honest, I may be getting ahead of myself here, and we may get to see this cut content from chapter 559 next week, but I just find it weird that we didn't see them getting cut down, and now Yhwach ends up being asleep and Hashward has its power. So it's really hard for me to imagine where that judgment scene is going to be shoehorned into the story now. I'll admit, I will be disappointed if BG9 and Kangdu have been off-screened, which is a possibility, because during the scene where judgment is passed down upon them in the manga, this ends up being the first time that Hashward hints to us how his Shrift ability to balance works. There is every chance that this passing judgment scene was not animated because the anime staff and Kubo don't want us to know about Hashward's ability so early on in the arc, especially if Core 3 and 4 will have way more original content. I do have to apologize because I started going off on a tangent there, but it is easily done with how the anime is chopping and changing around the material from the manga. It makes you wonder if they will or will not be going back to material that was not adapted into earlier episodes. Regardless of the concerns that we may have, it is difficult to say anything because Kubo clearly has a vision for the anime adaptation of the 1000-Year Blood War arc. He is literally reviewing the scripts for each and every episode, making changes, cuts and additions to his manga content in order for the full cause of the anime to tell a better version of Bleach's final arc. Whatever is going on, I trust Kubo's vision and I look forward to next week's episode, which is titled The White Haze. Episode 19 will have the return of a very fearsome Sternritter battling against another fan favorite Shinigami. But in the meantime, what did you think about episode 18 Rages at Ringside? I loved seeing the incredible animation and visual effects during Mask's battle against the Shinigami. Additionally, I love the anime only scene involving Shunsui taking charge over his underlings and the post-credit scene which reworks manga material to give Hashward and Uryu more of a nuanced role within the story. Did you enjoy these aspects of the episode too? Was there anything that you disliked, like rushing Renji vs Mask or Kangdu and BG9's judgment scene not occurring in this week's episode? Now lastly, be sure to stick around because each week I break down the episode in greater detail during my manga vs anime analysis video, which I upload the very next day after my episode reviews. So be sure to subscribe and stay tuned for that. I cannot wait to read all of your comments on this week's Bleach episode. And lastly, thanks for making it to the end of this video, and I cannot wait to see you tomorrow for my manga vs anime video. If you enjoy my content, then you can support my channel through Patreon for as little as $1 a month, or even through YouTube by becoming a channel member. You will gain access to exclusive channel perks and a Discord server which I frequently use. So become a member of my Zero Division and be the first to know about my upcoming videos. And once again, thank you for sticking around till the end of the video, and whatever you contribute will mean a lot to me.